Hello everyone, welcome back. So in the last video I pulled this engine out of the Subaru Legacy Outback and it's got a head gasket issue. So in today's video I'm going to show the process of removing the heads off the engine block and all the things you need to remove to do that. Again, in the last video I showed the process of pulling the engine out of the car, and now we're going to be removing the heads off the engine. Now the first thing I'm going to do is remove this cam sprocket so I can get access to the timing system, so I can remove all that. So this is going to take a 22mm socket to remove this pulley. While you're trying to get that loose, it's probably going to turn the engine, so what I like to do is get a nice piece of metal. I'll just carefully slide it in here between the flywheel, the bell housing back here, and then when I turn it, it'll put tension on that and it should bust loose. And it's just easy as that. And out it comes. If it's still really stuck on there, might as well give it a try with some penetrating fluid to break up some of that rust. So just give it a spray around the inside here. Okay, let's give this a try now. It's still on there pretty well. And with a little bit of penetrating fluid and some manpower, it'll come right off. I'm just going to put this bolt right back where it came from for now. Now I can remove the timing belt cover. There's 3 bolts, they're 10mm. 1, 2, 3. If those 3 bolts removed, the timing cover should just pop right off. And we do the other side, of course, as well. Another 3 bolts. And these things are pretty dirty and greasy, so I'm going to end up cleaning all of this. Off comes the cover. So if the side cover's off, it's not time to take off the main cover. There's 8 bolts total, 5 on top, 5 on top, 3 on the bottom. And they're 10mm as well. And these bolts are 10mm. In case you didn't see it, here's where those 3 are on the bottom. One here, one there, one there. They're pretty kicked in dirt. When you're removing all these bolts, as a note, they're all the same. They look like this. They're all the same except for this one here. And this one goes here, right in front of the oil filter. Now, should be able to take off the center cover. There are some rubber pieces on here, they'll probably just stick a little bit. And there it is. I'm just going to remove the spark plug wires just to get them out of my way now. So next I'm going to remove the timing belt, and before I do that, you want to align the engine so the alignment marks are all in place, which will be these marks here on the cam pulleys. You can see these marks here. You want to make sure these are all aligned. You also have an alignment mark for your crankshaft there on that sprocket. So to get everything aligned, you just rotate the engine. You may feel some resistance, that's just the compression stroke. It might be easier if you take out the spark plugs, but once that compression stroke is over, you'll feel it relieve. It doesn't help that I also have the intake manifold ports plugged, so it also adds more resistance. When the engine's aligned, this mark here on the sprocket should be aligned with this little gash back here on the back of the cover. These two should be lined up, and this one here on the side should be lined up with that little cut notch right there. Same for the other side. You have two here with these two here, and then the one here on the side. And then your center sprocket, this line right here, should be lined up with that right there. So to remove the timing belt, just take a 14mm, put it on the side of the pulley, break it loose. Ooh, that one was on there pretty good. Now if that loose, we can remove the tensioner, which is another 14mm bolt right here. Okay. And with the tensioner removed, now you just simply remove the timing belt. Next, we're going to remove the cam sprockets. These are 14mm bolts, and there's a couple of different ways you can do this. I'm going to use air tool and just buzz this right off, so you just firmly hold it and then just buzz that bolt right off. Some people don't like to do that, but I've never had any problems with it. If you don't use that method, you'll have to either buy a special tool for about $80 to grip this hexagonal shape here and then get it off, or you'll have to get a pair of pliers, which I've never had good luck with because it just ends up stripping or breaking the sprocket. If you don't have air tools, another method you can use is the timing belt method. So do this to your old timing belt because it will ruin it. I put a cloth over it to see if that would help protect it any bit more. We'll see, but you wrap the timing belt around your cam sprocket, and then you wrap it around a couple of your pulleys and then the center crank, and you use 2 vice grips, and that should put enough tension for you to release that. And one loose. This actually might be a better way too, because I've never had an issue, but air tools, depending on how stuck these get on, they can shear or snap or ruin your bolt, and that'll give you more of a difficult time. These can be a bugger. And also, the reason why I made sure the engine was in timing, the whole point of that earlier, is to make sure all 4 pistons are halfway in their chambers. That way, if you do use an air tool, or you do happen to spin the camshaft all the way, the valves shouldn't slap the pistons, which, you know, that can ruin your engine pretty quick if you're using an air tool. So these 2.5s are interference engines, so you got to watch out for that. So that's why you make sure all your timing marks are aligned. But with that, it just pops right off. I am using the cloth. If you got a really old timing belt, you don't need to, you know, protect it. I'm just seeing this if it works, and it kind of does, but it'll still leave a mark on the timing belt. So be aware of that. So I do recommend using an old timing belt. And then we'll take this, put it around the water pump, nice and snug, and come around, and then we'll put it back around the crank again. While you're doing this, make sure you're not spinning the crank. If you are, you'll have to put it back. There we go. See if I can get this one now. Ooh. Didn't think it was gonna work. Sometimes it'll strip. Try not to get these mixed up. the top one has these little magnets. Pretty sure these are magnets, but that's for your knock sensor that's up here on top of the engine. Right there. So this one goes on top, and this one goes below. I think they're marked, so should be able to figure it out. And if I didn't mention earlier, these bolts are 17 mils, not 14 if I said 14. Yeah, 17's for these, 14's for the pulleys. Alright, let's see if this works. So I wrapped the belt around both these pulleys, cinched it down here, and then it wraps around this pulley at the bottom, S's up around this one, and I wrapped it around the crank and pinched it off of there. I might, if I'm lucky, might be able to get both of these in one go. Ooh. One. Yeah! Now we can remove these plastic covers on the back of the engine. Just removing these bolts. There's a couple of them, about 5 I think on this one. These are just 10 mils. This one here is already broken. I'm not sure if I broke it removing these sprockets off or if it was already broken. But watch out for that because they're kind of fragile. Great, I'm going to have to take this pulley off now. Got in my way. That. Perfect. Usually plastic weld these back together if you're really picky about what they look like. Oh yeah, this one definitely has a little metal washer piece in there, so when you pull this off, try not to lose that. And just pops right off like that. Piece of plastic. And we do the same thing for the other side. And there's just 3 of them on this side. So you pop this out, so all the holes are out from around the cams and the knock sensor. Then you just slowly wiggle this out from in between. Actually, it's probably going to be easier, and I probably will have to do this, is loosen up your oil dipstick, and this is going to have to come off anyways, so. That's a 10 millimeter bolt. So that loose. This plastic piece should just be able to slide out a little easier. There we go. Just kind of had to bend it out of the way. And there's rubber pieces on here, so try not to lose that. If we come back here to the back of the engine, might as well take off this EGR pipe. Take the pipe off. It's a 17 millimeter wrench. I'm just going to let this soak with some penetrating fluid. Hopefully that'll loosen it up a bit. So with a little bit of penetrating fluid, I was able to snake this part of the wrench down the pipe and get it on here for a little bit more grip. That did the trick. So no more stripping the bolt. It's coming right out now. So probably a mix of that penetrating fluid and getting the wrench on here with more grip definitely helped. And there it is. Yeah, so 10 mils to get these off. There. There. That's the last bolt. Just to gently pry this off. Just grab it here. There it goes. Off it comes. So next, we'll be taking off the cams. There's 3 brackets, and these are also 10 mils, so 3 each. Total of 12 bolts for both. So we'll remove that, and when you do remove the cams, you'll want to be careful because you got these little buckets below them, You don't want to have those fall out onto your floor, and you want to keep track of them and keep them in their original position. Don't get them mixed up. So make sure they don't fall out, and if they do, put them back where they came from. I'm taking these heads to a machine shop, so they'll take care of a lot of this for me. I'm just going to have it resurfaced and have them check the valves. Alright, so now I'm going to take off the camshafts. Don't mix up the camshafts either. So make sure you don't mix it up at all. So these are 10 millimeters. Oh, these are on there pretty good. Now for the upper one. Oh, that was easy. This top one's looking a lot easier than that bottom one. Whew. I think someone's worked on this engine at some point. There we go. Same with the brackets. I like to put them back in their original spot. I put everything back in its original place. Even the bolts, I try. Might be overkill, but that's just how I work on engines. And I usually put it on a cardboard cutout so that way I don't lose things. That pulls right off, and that's your cam seal right there. And these are the buckets I was telling you about right here, these lifters. Make sure they don't fall out. Let's get this one off. Probably should be wearing gloves while I'm doing this to protect me and the engine, but it's alright. There it is. Oof, that one was a little bit more stubborn. And just like that. Alright, now I have the engine upright like this on its side. It's time to remove the 6 head bolts. Before you do this, I recommend redraining the oil pan since you had it tilted. Otherwise you'll have a mess like I do. All the oil just ran out this breather hose out of the valve cover and just made a mess. So I have an extra mess to clean up now. Welcome to the world of working on engines. And this is why you get yourself some diatomaceous earth, specifically made to clean up oil spills. So it'll do the job for you mostly. Alright, so now for the fun part, removing the head bolts. This is going to take a 14mm 12-point socket to get this off. And a big crowbar and some muscle, because they're usually on here pretty good. So you want to start from the outside in. I'm going to start on this bolt here. One. Two. Three. 4. 5. Someone's definitely worked on this. There's some kind of coloration markings on the head bolts. I'm curious to see what kind of gasket's on here. And 6. There we go. Now we can pull off the head. Whew. Yeah, one of the bolts made a hissing sound when I opened her up, and let out an interesting smell. Again, when you pull these head bolts out, don't mix them up. Remember where they came from. I will be reusing these head bolts. In another video, when I show you how to install head gaskets, I'll show you the proper way to torque down used head bolts, because the process is different with used ones than it is with brand new ones. It's an interesting smell that's being released out of here. It's like a popcorn oil smell. It's interesting. And there's one head bolt right there. Don't mix these up. And that's the last one. Now it's time to pull the head off, but before I do, I'm going to put the cams back on because I'm sending this to the machine shop with the cams and everything. Alright, the time has come. Let's pull this head off. Hopefully it comes off nice and easy. Oh yeah, popped right off. Alright, so let's take a look at the head gasket, and I'm going to explain a few things about this head gasket. So, this appears to be the OEM graphite gasket. Now, this gasket's doomed to fail because of that graphite coating. It eventually peels off with age, and it makes the head gasket blow. You can see it right there where it blew, the failure point. The graphite coating peeled off around these coolant ports, and it blew off into the combustion chamber. That's not even the worst one. This one completely failed. The graphite coating came off completely. It should ideally look more like this, but even here around these edges it was starting to peel off. So that is why it failed. But what is interesting is these head gaskets usually don't last more than 100,000 miles. And since this car has over 200,000 miles, and judging by some of the markings on the bolts and some of the bolts being tighter than they should be and some other wear marks, I'm pretty certain someone at some point replaced the head gasket for the same reason, but they put the problem gasket back on, a brand new one with the same issue. So it was doomed to fail again. So to fix that, I'm going to be putting on in another video the multi-layered steel head gasket. And they do make a multi-layered steel head gasket, but it also has the graphite coating. So the point is, avoid head gaskets with any kind of coating of any kind. Just go with the OEM multi-layered steel non-coated head gasket from Subaru. Overall though, inside the chambers looks pretty good. I can still see some cross-hatching, so that's a good sign. And overall the engine looks pretty clean, so now I'm going to remove the other head. It's the same exact process, so I'm just going to speed right through it. Same thing again, failure point here and here. It's that graphite coating, so both the heads failed. Right there. Failure point, failure point. They both failed the same way. So what I'm going to do now, just so I don't mix things up and I don't lose them, I'm going to put the head bolts back in their slots. Like so. Just a couple turns so they won't fall out. That way I won't lose them. Alright, the heads are now off the Subaru. I forgot to remove the spark plug, so I'm going to go and do that right now. Alright, so that's how you remove the cylinder heads off the block of the EJ2.5 dual overhead cam engine. Now, other Subaru engines, the process might be slightly different depending on the year, but a lot of them should be the same unless you're dealing with Subaru engines that have rocker arms and other things as such. But a lot of them, like these dual overhead cams, or even the single head cams, some of them, they're pretty similar. I'm now going to drop these cylinder heads off at the machine shop. I'm going to have them resurfaced, and I'm going to also have them check the valves to make sure they're all good. I'm not going to do a full rebuild unless there's something majorly wrong with those heads. So just a good simple machine surface so it sits nicely onto the block again. And I highly recommend that you do the same with your heads. You can do it yourself, but I feel like it's just a nice peace of mind to take it to a shop to have it professionally resurfaced and get the job right the first time. So when you're putting the head gasket on here, it's right and it doesn't blow again after 10,000 miles. So in the next video, I'll be showing you how to put on the head gasket and the whole process of cleaning off this block surface, because it will also need to be cleaned. But that is something you can do yourself. So I hope you all found this video helpful, and I'll see you all in the next video.